It's been exactly 2 years since I did my review of the Bushnell MPED 5-30x56. That was a scope that I was truly blown away by, especially for the price at the given time. That was a scope I was always trying to justify buying for myself, but I just didn't have any real reason for it. Fast forward to the summer of 2025, and I was wondering if there was a better 3-18 that I could put on my Tikka CTR in 308. Currently, the Meopta Optica 6 3-18x50 is on that rifle, and I wanted to see for myself if I could find something that could replace it. With that being said, what comes inside the box is very minimal. The box itself is extremely discreet. You get the scope, a sunshade, a little cattail, and the wonderful adjustment tool, which is everything you'll ever need to adjust this optic. With a very quick removal of this little sticker on the battery compartment, which by the way has way too much stickiness to it, you can see all the residue, we check the weight on this thing. On my scale, I get just about 28.7 ounces. On their website, they claim 28.4, so pretty damn close. For comparison's sake, I have the Athlon Helos BTR Gen 2 4-20, which is a little bit lighter, and the Maven RS 1.2, which is a little bit lighter still, but not that much. As far as all the features on this thing, it is very reminiscent of the 5-30. The fast focus eyepiece is very tight and very rigid, which is nice to see. The magnification ring also has a standard throw of 180 degrees, and thankfully there are 3 different locations for that little cattail to screw into, which is wonderful to see. Using the provided tool, swapping this into any of those positions is a cinch. And with that cattail installed, adjusting the magnification is simple and easy. The magnification ring itself is pretty rigid to turn, so that cattail makes it a lot easier, but it is smooth otherwise. Removing the battery compartment cover is a little bit of a tricky thing because the knurls on it are very good, but they're very, very shallow, so it's a little bit tricky to get to. Opening up the compartment, you see we have a standard CR2032 battery, 3 dimple PCB board, and our 6-finger leaf spring on the cap. Once that is installed, you can see that this illumination knob might look familiar. In fact, it looks exactly like the new gen illumination knobs found on the Vector Continental series of scopes. And just like with the Continentals, it goes to power setting 11, and it has an off just before it in between 10 and 11. It feels really good in hand, and the detents are nice, sharp, and deep. The parallax knob is just over 180 degrees of throw from its minimum of 15 yards to its maximum of infinity, and it's pretty damn tight, but the splines on this are nice and sharp, and it allows you to get a really good purchase on it so you can turn it quite easily. This has a capped windage, which I'm a really big fan of, especially with the mill deployed to reticle, which is a very busy Christmas tree style reticle. Typically, I am a big fan of holding for wind with my reticle as opposed to dialing for wind because I don't ever shoot in the exact same conditions all the time, and I doubt you do either. Underneath the cap though, the windage turret feels absolutely sensational. Very solid feel and sound to it. Wonderful. Just like we saw with the illumination control, this elevation turret looks also very similar. In fact, almost too similar to a Vector Continental. The lockup is the same, the way it secures on with that little screw is the same, and the rotational indicator, that little red button on top, is also the same. With the turret completely off, you can see that even the zero stop is the exact same. And ironically enough, shortly after I received the scope and I did my unboxing and I set it up, Vector asked me what scope I'd like to review from them. So I asked if I could get my hands on their 3-18x50, which is not featured here. This is the 2-12 because that's all I had on hand at the time. But as you will see, the turrets are the exact same. The layout is very similar. Now the finishes are slightly different, but that's to be expected because every brand is going to want their scope to have a particular look about them. But looking at the controls between these two, they look really, really close. So much so, I decided to see if the caps are going to be the same for the elevation turret. Removing the screw from the Vector Continental, and you can see they are the exact same. There's no two ways about it. Everything about them is identical. And when you look at both turrets underneath, well, the caps are, again, identical. This is not by coincidence. This is not by mistake. This is probably Vector being the OEM for Bushnell for the MPED series of scopes. That's right. I said that. I went as far as to ask Vector if that was true, but they cannot answer that question because if they're in contract with Bushnell, legally they're not able to answer that. However, taking the Vector turret and putting it on the Bushnell proves that it works just fine. So with that all out of the way, let's get behind this Bushnell MPED 3-18x50 and see what it's like to use. And if you're wondering how this compares to the Vector Continental 3-18, I am going to do a side-by-side comparison in this video, and I might even go as far as to make my own separate video between those two. This scope features the MIL-Deploy-to Reticle, which is the same reticle found in the 5-30. In the 5-30 it worked very well because the minimum being 5 is 2 more than this, but it also goes up 12x higher on the top end. And with this reticle being as frankly busy as it is, the more magnification you have, the less chaotic it looks. I was really worried about this being a little bit too busy in this magnification range. And I can say I'm not really completely sold on it just yet. At 3x, it's actually not terrible, but picking up a perfect dead center on it is a little bit tricky. At 18x, it's still a little bit tricky. There's still a lot going on, but I really wish that they offered the new G5 reticle that apparently is only offered in the 5-30. I think this reticle has a lot of potential. It looks like a lot of the best things from the MIL-Deploy-to and the older style G2 reticles. Why, oh why, Bushnell, did you not have this available for this magnification range? Anyway, the reticle itself is pretty easy to read here at 18x, and the illumination on this thing is quite bright, much brighter than I was expecting, and definitely class leading as far as overall brightness goes. On top of it being very bright, it's also very sharp and clean. There's very little bleed out, and it's very easy to find the perfect illumination setting for your given environment. Very well done, Vector. I mean, Bushnell. I hope y'all didn't mind the crickets. I didn't realize just how loud they were until I started editing this video together. Apologies. Turrets on this sound and feel very good, just like they have with all the Vector Continentals with the same turret, as is the same with the 5-30. Tracking is something that a scope like this has to do well. This is definitely more on the side of precision. So being able to have the reticle be lined up perfectly so you could use it for ranging between you and someone else or you and one of your other scopes is important. The reticle lines up to my target very close. It's about 1/10 of a mil off at 9 mils, so we just have to keep that in mind. Doing 4 mils over and 4 mils up, it is perfect. Resetting the windage is perfect, and continuing up with our elevation to 9 mils, it is perfect. Even to 10 mils, you could see it lines up really well. But again, we were about 1/10 or so off at the beginning, so as perfect as it lines up, it's still about 1/10 off. Now you can see this thing just continues to dial up and up and up, and that is because on paper, this scope has a total elevation gain of 40 mils, meaning if you go towards the middle, you have 20 mils of added elevation, which is a lot. Transitioning into my backyard, we're going to start with low light testing. It's early evening, tail end of the summer, early part of the fall, and as you can see, we have a pretty good view of my precision targets downrange. Illumination on this thing, as I've said before, is extremely bright. Looking downrange with the naked camera, you get hopefully a good sense of what we're looking at, and getting back behind the scope, I can't really say I noticed any sort of brightness shift or brightness loss. Everything looks pretty solid. Optically, this thing has been pretty good so far. Controls-wise, has been really good. I love how little of the scope body we see, and the view looking through it is rather large. It does have a 3.8-inch eye relief, but it feels much closer than that, but not in a negative way. Bringing it up to 18x, you can see that the targets downrange look really solid once I dial in the side parallax just right. With the illumination, I was able to find just the perfect setting for it, which again is a huge win for this thing. Checking out image stability here, you could see that the illumination is visible well to the outside edge. Wonderful. Bringing it back to about 10x, and it performs still really well. The Eyebox on this thing is very forgiving. I've found that most modern 3-18s are blessed to have that key attribute, which for me is extremely important. And I'm sure for all of you out there, it doesn't hurt to have. Let's focus on some much farther targets. We are going to be first panning across this very wooded area in the tail end of the summer. Late morning, absolutely beautiful, crystal clear, perfect day. The Deploy 2 reticle is very busy, but it's also very fine at 3x. With the illumination on, you can just start picking it up in the very hard to read areas. Ultimately, not the worst performance, but far from what I would consider the best. Still, for this magnification range, the MRED one from the Optica 6 is probably as good as you could possibly get without going dual focal plane for speed at 3x and precision at 18. Focusing on our first solar panel at 360 yards, I dial the side parallax before I increase the magnification to roughly where we need to be, and you could see it's extremely close. I make a quick adjustment, and you could see that the solar panel, well, I'm getting tongue twisted, does go from a green tint to a purple tint. A lot of scopes have been doing this lately. It's completely normal, especially in really bright conditions. I find that the more light that the scope lets in, the more noticeable the chromatic aberration is. You can dial out most of it, but to get the perfect clear image that I was able to get, it still has a slight purple tint to it, but it is far from jarring or in the way. Focusing our attention on the 1,000-yard solar panel, I once again adjust the side parallax to where we roughly need to be, which on this side parallax knob is not a very far distance off. In fact, it's really close. And increasing the magnification again from its minimum to its maximum yields an extremely impressive looking result. You can see that we have a lot of turbulence going on with the air. We have a steady boiling mirage. Wind was starting to creep up, so that's going to play around with the image a little bit. But everything as far as what we're able to see downrange looks really good despite all of that. Edge-to-edge sharpness on this thing at any magnification at any distance has been really impressive up to this point. I dial back the magnification to about 10x before I increase the elevation 10 plus mils to see if we have any image shift or image sharpness loss. Very important if you are shooting out at these distances and you're dialing for your elevation. If you didn't want to dial for your elevation, you could easily get to 9 full mils on this reticle without doing anything other than just holding. And this reticle is really good for holding. I still think it's a little bit on the finer side. I would like to see just a little bit less going on, at least even just something as simple as taking off all the odd numbers on the elevation drops. But despite that, I'm talking over the most important part, adding 10 mils of elevation does not change the sharpness of the image at 1,000 yards. And the exit pupil didn't shift. I did adjust the camera to see if it would make a difference, and it didn't. It's really good. Image stability on this thing is exceptional, and dialing for 10 mils of elevation at 1,000 yards shows that this thing is very capable of handling dialing for dope, which is fantastic. As far as our Eyebox and image stability goes, at 18x, shifting the camera side to side, you can see we have a very steady progression from one side of the scope to the other, and we have no loss of sharpness to either the reticle or the target. Bringing it down to 10x, we have a very similar performance, but it does get wider, which is expected. Not all the time, but it's still expected most of the time. Bring down the magnification to roughly 6x, you can see we start getting a little bit of a loss of sharpness all the way at the extreme ends, but it's so extreme that you'd have to literally not have your cheek on your buttstock to be able to look through it. Finishing up at 3x, and this looks like it's the worst performance, but only because we're going so far off on the side of the scope. Really, it's a tremendous performance. To give you a better sense of this, here we are at 3x, really dancing around this scope, and as you can see, focusing on a 180-yard piece of steel, everything is really easy and simple to get behind. The eye relief, exit pupil, and overall image forgiveness on this thing is extremely high. Very, very good. At 10x, you can see it's still very easy to get a perfect image on this thing, even though I'm just holding my camera stretched out in my hands. Getting behind this thing in any sort of position at any sort of magnification that I had during my testing proved to be very easy and very enjoyable. 18x is still pretty solid. I would say it's at least average, maybe a touch better. Illumination is also extremely good, more than bright enough to pick it up, and still visible well out into the shadows. It starts to show those little kidney beans from the asymmetrical lenses when you're really off at the extremes, but that's something to be expected on almost any price point of scope. Speaking of price point, these things are around $850, which is a pretty big pill to swallow. If you spit your milk out when I said $850, I would not blame you in the slightest. But don't worry, folks, because for the $530 price point of the Vector Continental 3-18 by 50 featured on the right-hand side, you can buy a scope that is 94.3% of the MPED for a lot less money. I say that percentage because it's not a 100% one-to-one. The reason is the Vector Continental that I had received with this, frankly, simple-looking Christmas tree style reticle with a very large center dot, which Vector dubs the SCFF28, only has 6 levels of adjustment to the illumination control. It's the older style turret, and as you can see, it's only the center dot that gets illuminated, and it is nowhere near as bright as what the MPED is capable of. I don't know why. I don't like it. I wish it had the brightness of the MPED, but c'est la vie. This is the only reticle option that I have tried, so maybe there are other reticles that perform better. I do prefer the simplicity of the Vector Continental reticle over the MPED. It's a much more traditional style Christmas tree reticle, and call me a sucker, but I don't hate the larger dot in the middle. It's still not so large that's going to obscure your target downrange, but it's nowhere as fine as with the MPED. Optically, though, these two are as near as makes no difference, as close as you can expect to one another. And yes, I filmed these on the exact same day within minutes from one another. I would actually give the edge to the Continental. If you look closely between these two images, the MPED looks a little bit cooler to my eye, whereas the Continental seems a little bit warmer. Overall maximum sharpness at the center is very close, but I think the Vector has it edged out ever so slightly, and I don't know why. It could be a very minor deviation from the rear eyepiece being slightly off, or maybe the side parallax being slightly off, but we're really starting to get into the weeds. But between these two, the Conti just looks a touch better to my eye. As far as chromatic aberration, they both have the exact same levels, and overall sharpness at the center, like I've already said, is identical. Also, look at the view through both of these scopes. They're identical. Also, the weight, I should have mentioned that, basically identical. 28.4 to 28.9 for the MPED and the Continental. Length, they're both the same at 13.2 inches. Field of view, we're going to start with the MPED 41 feet to 6.8 to 40.8 to 6.8 with the Continental. And part of that, I guarantee you, is due to the fact that the MPED claims 3.8 inches of eye relief, the Continental 4 inches, and I found them to be, again, the exact same when I did these on my camera rig. So, are these two the same scope? They're, as near as makes no difference, the same, at least when it comes to its overall physical layout, with the exception of the illumination control. I cannot say that the Continental will always be with the older style illumination control. I really hope it doesn't, because if it had the same brightness as the MPED, even with the center dot, I think it would really be a force to reckon with, especially for the price point. $530, you're talking about $220 right now off the standard price of the MPED. That is a lot of money. Now, there are a couple of other differences that I didn't mention. The Continental doesn't have a throw lever and really desperately needs it. The MPED does have that cattail. But other than that, there isn't a whole lot else to really talk about. I do prefer the deep bull-nosed scallop cuts of the Continental's controls. I find it to be not only very attractive looking, but very effective and efficient. Between these two, it depends on your budget and if you prefer one name versus the other. But if you are looking for the best bang for your buck, go with the Continental. My next comparison is going to be with the Steiner T6Xi. This is going to be in 3 to 15 by 56, featuring the SCR2 reticle. This is a scope that I reviewed quite some time ago, but with the MSR2 reticle. One individual on a forum was nice enough to let me borrow this while he was waiting to get it sold. So to that individual, if he is watching, thank you so much, because I really wanted to get my hands on the SCR2 to see if I like it more than the MSR2. And to say that I like it more than the MSR2 is a bold understatement. The SCR2 is fantastic. It offers a lot of information while still being simple, clean, and elegant. A very, very nice reticle, especially for the magnification range. I bet it would be even better in the 5 to 30, but maybe that'll be an experience that I'll have in the near future. Now, these two scopes don't really compare other than the magnification range. Price point on the Steiner is basically $2,000. Lengthwise, Steiner's about a half inch longer, 13.6 inches. Steiner's also about 6 ounces heavier at 34 ounces. Overall field of view actually goes to the MPED at the minimum, 41 feet to 37 feet, but then at 18x to the Steiner at 7 feet to 6.8 feet. And overall eye relief is going to go, well, if you prefer a closer eye relief, the Steiner is going to be the winner at 3.3 to 3.5 versus 3.8 for the MPED. Optically, the T6Xi is the vastly superior scope. It rendered everything absolutely beautifully. Overall controls-wise, I'm going to sound a little weird on this, but I prefer the MPED. I'm not sold on the twist-to-lock locking setup of the T6 series scopes. I just find it's not as intuitive for me. And if you accidentally go the wrong way to lock or unlock, well, to lock it, then you're going to be making an adjustment to the elevation turret. I'm also a much bigger fan of 10 mils per rotation as opposed to the 13 or so for the T6, and it just doesn't feel as nice overall. Hell, even the MPED feels better with the side parallax adjustment and the illumination adjustment. It's really odd. In fact, that's the reason why I didn't buy the T6, is because I still prefer a lot of other scopes that are much less expensive for the overall end user experience of the optic. Yeah, optically the T6 is superior, but overall there are other scopes that I just enjoy as a package more. Now, if you're willing to give up 1x on the bottom end to gain 2x on the top end, you really should consider the Athlon Helos BTR Gen 2 4 to 20. This is a 30mm tube as opposed to a 34 from the MPED. It is a lot less expensive though, roughly $600. Lengthwise, they're the same at 13.3 inches. Weight-wise, the Helos is a little bit lighter by about 1.5 ounces. Overall field of view is going to be different, again because of the magnification range difference. And the overall eye relief is going to be more or less the same. The Helos, though, has even better controls than the MPED, and I vastly prefer the reticle. And I really like the 4 to 20 magnification range. Here at their maximums, the Helos reticle is just easier to read. That center dot has got a little bit more room to breathe, so you could really see what's going on around it, as opposed to the MPED, everything sort of like chokes around it. I also prefer the drops on the Helos and just the overall end user experience once again. Optically, the Helos is also the winner. Very little to no chromatic aberration, very sharp image edge to edge. We do have a smaller view looking through it, clearly between these two here, but again, the Helos to me is the better overall product. I liked it so much that I actually threw it on top of my CZ457 Precision, and I don't have any plans of ever taking it off. It's such a sweet little package. Now, yeah, it's made in China, but guess what? So is the MPED. So is the Continental. The Steiner is assembled in the USA with, I'm sure, global components. I don't think they're 100% made in the US, but at least they're assembled here, which is really nice to see. And that's partly why it's so friggin' expensive. 3 times the price, in fact. Between these two, which one would I pick? Well, it's pretty self-explanatory. It's going to be the Helos. It's a little bit lighter, but like an ounce and a half. It's a 30mm tube as opposed to 34. You're not going to have the same elevation gain, though. Only 32 mils of elevation versus 40. But even if you cut that in half, that's still 16 mils of elevation for the Helos versus 20 for the MPED. It's still a lot. If you need more than that, run a canted mount. But you're also saving a lot of money going with the Helos. It is a little bit more expensive than the Vector, but I really like the Helos a lot. Yeah. Pick whichever one you prefer, but for me, I'd have to go with the Helos, and that's exactly what I did. So, my bad, I forgot to change the title. So, this is not a Helos, this is the Meopta Optica 6 3-18x50, the Mac Daddy 3-18 that I've tried to replace with other scopes, this MPED being one of them, and I just haven't because it's still so good. They're finally becoming available again, and unfortunately the price went from roughly $800 to right around $1,000. You can find them on eurooptic.com, and if you are interested in that, shoot me a text and I can send you to my friend Eric over at tyrannynotallowed.com, and he can quote you on a price with that. As far as the rest of the specs, the Meopta is going to be over an inch longer at 14.6 inches. It's going to be 2 ounces heavier at 30 ounces. Field of view is going to be much smaller, 33.5 to 5.8, and that's 41 to 6.8 for the MPED. That is a very huge difference. Eye relief is actually going to be a little bit longer with the Optica 6 at 3.9 inches versus 3.8 with the MPED. But make no mistake, folks, the Optica 6 is an optical powerhouse. Its controls are absolutely wonderful, even though the rubber outside textured ring on my side parallax is starting to slip a little bit, which I'm not the biggest fan of. It's still just a very serious package for anyone that's looking for a 3-18 that's going to be able to perform extremely well at 3x and very well at 18x. I will say that the Reticle, the Deploy 2 on the MPED, is the more capable reticle at 18x as opposed to the MRAD 1 of the Optica. But at 3x, the MRAD 1 is absolutely sensational. And for me, it's a great balance of speed and usability throughout the entire magnification range. And for me and how I like to shoot my rifles, especially the Tikka CTR that it's currently on, well, it is just about as good as you could possibly get. Optically, it goes hands down to the Optica 6, and it absolutely should. It is a little bit more expensive than the MPED. It's about $1,000 right now, but there's also a brand new version that's out, the Mia Pro R6 in 3-18x50, which looks like it's an improved version of the Optica 6 with a couple of tweaks that I am extremely excited about. So I'm hoping to get my hands on one of those by purchasing it for the $1,000 that it costs. Thank you all of you for making that possible and reviewing it. And if it's better than the Optica 6, well then boy howdy, that is going to be an absolute powerhouse. What else can I say, folks? I bought this MPED thinking and hoping that it would be exceptionally good, and it definitely has a lot of good going on with it. Sharpness, clarity is very high, controls are very good, its tracking performance is exceptional, and its overall package and format and footprint is, well, properly ratioed. It's got a really nice look and feel to it. However, for the $850 that you can buy one of these for, it puts it in very stiff competition, within $100 to $150 from, in my opinion, some vastly superior optics. If you like what the Bushnell has to offer, but you don't want to spend that money, the answer is pretty clear. Look at the Continental 3-18 or even the Athlon Helos BTR Gen 2 4-20. Both of those scopes are going to be very similar to this optic, but with slight differences. The Continental being basically the exact same as the MPED, and the Helos being a little bit thinner, a little bit lighter, and a little bit more svelte of an optic. It's a really good combination. It's also optically superior, and I personally prefer the reticle and the controls of the Helos. Doesn't mean that you're going to, but if it's something that's going to interest you, I can almost guarantee it you will be satisfied with either of those optics. I really like what this scope has to offer, but not enough to keep it. So I plan on selling this, because I also have the Continental 3-18 that Vector sent me. And it's the exact same as this scope, with, in my opinion, a slightly better tuned reticle for the magnification, even though the illumination is vastly superior in the MPED. But it will do everything I would ever really hope for an optic like that, and I'll have it where I can throw it on a spare rifle or lend it out to somebody if they need to, have an optic on their rifle, or just to test it out and see if they like the magnification range. For that, it's absolutely perfect. And that's basically it. This is a very good scope, and if you could find it on a deal, like a $500, $600 price deal, and you like what it has to offer, you will be very satisfied with your money being spent towards it. If it's only going to be for the $800 to $850 price point that it's currently sitting at, just keep in mind there are a lot of other fish in the sea. With all that being said, a huge thank you for Vector for sending in their 3-18 so I can compare it against this to see that they're basically one and the same. But ultimately, a huge thank you for all of you staying tuned for as long as you have. Again, it is because of you that I keep this channel going. So sincerely, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much. And as always, I'll see you again next time. And a huge thank you to my Patreon providers and my Subscribe subscribers. Without you, this truly wouldn't be possible. If you'd like to support my channel but don't want to join either of those, I completely understand. But you could still help by using my affiliate links in the description below, and or like, share, and subscribe as always. Again, thank you very much.